a wonderful partnership with the Placer Community Foundation, where they have had an art endowment that has funded a yearly residency. And this year, Jennifer Rugge is our local artist recipient. So she is our very first earth artist. We've had lots of painters, drawers, ceramic artists as well, but Jennifer has such a unique art and style, yes, especially very eco-friendly too. So I'm very excited to watch her lecture along with everyone else. So please give a round of applause for Jennifer Rugge.
Yeah, that would be ideal. Yeah, that would be.
If I walk around, is that okay?
Yep.
Okay. Well, first I want to thank the Placer Community Foundation for implementing this program and having Blue Line Arts host it. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share my art and my art processes, as well as share it with this community. And it just is a big thrill for me to be able to do this. Briefly, I have a BS in languages and art. That may seem very far apart from each other, but somehow I've been able to weave it together. So that, and I also have an education degree and a master's in educational transformation.
Yep.
When my interests began as a child, my parents, my father was an underwater photographer and diver, as well as an educator. My mother was an artist, and the two of them took us on excursions to Baja. So a lot of times I ran up and down the beaches of Baja before they became so built up that you can't do that anymore. So we camped on the beaches, we ate from the ocean, and I also bathed in the ocean. So this is my mother here. My dad took the photograph of her, and this is what we did when we were down in Baja. He was quite the photographer. He would give lectures on his underwater photography because he was one of the first pioneers in doing underwater photography. And if you know Jacques Cousteau, he did too.
Mm-hmm. All right.
One of the things too is when I was quite young, my parents took me to this museum in La Jolla down in San Diego. I was born and raised there, and so I just thought we were going to the beach. But then I walked into the museum, or the center there, and I had a piece of artwork in there. And I was like, oh, we're here for, look, there's my art. And that was something I'll never forget. I was just captivated by it, and I thought, that's me, that's what I'm going to do. So I started off very early, being very much aware of being able to be in an art museum. From there, as I got older, one of the things or opportunities that I had is visiting the Navajo Indian Reservation. And they're called the Dene. And I was so taken by the kids that I was meeting that were my age. I was a young teenager, and we were all working together in a arts and recreation program. So I was quite involved with them, and I spent time out sleeping in a hogan on sheepskins, herding sheep, and really getting a feel for what it is to live out away from the cities. And my interest in art and languages was really perked because when I was in Mexico, I wanted to learn Spanish. So that's the main language that I, began to study. But when I went to the Navajo reservation, it was Diné Vizad, which is the Navajo language. And I was so captivated by that, I started to see crossovers where the Spanish language was part of, also seen in the Diné language. So that made me really curious, and I wanted to study more languages. So that's what started me studying languages in school. But I took it a step further. I wanted to know, where did these languages come from? So I started to study the roots of them and go way back in time. Not just 100 years or so ago. We're going to go way back into the caves. So this is where I got my interest, and you can see there's pictographs here, and even over on this side, those are signs that I have seen in cave art. Okay, that's older than this art. Okay. Thank you. So this is where my linguistics roots start, and I found that I was particularly drawn to the Hebrew ancient pictographs, because I found that many of the pictographs were similar to Native American drawings or signs on the walls, as well as South American, as well as Australian. And I even found some in, of course, in Europe and in the caves. So this is kind of what I put together to show you how I looked at different roots of languages and what captured my interest, and where I was looking for cross-referencing and overlaps of the signs that you see. I had the opportunity, my husband and I, to live in Europe for 6.5 years. And this was one of my favorite artists, Friedrichsen Hundertwasser. And I just loved the way he incorporated organic materials into his work. Matter of fact, when he built this place here, he was asked to build it by a big corporation that wanted to build this nice, big, huge resort. It had hot springs and everything. And he made some deals with them and said, well, we're going to kind of do it my way. And he put it in there. So you see that he has trees and grass on top. This is the roof. So he was very organic. The materials that he used were left over from World War II rubble. So he incorporated them, painted them, and made this fantastic place, which my husband and I were able to visit. And the people there that ran the place grew their own vegetables and organic meals, and everything in this place was organic. I was just totally wow. Because Hundertwasser was also one of the originators of the composting toilet, of all things. So, anyways, he's an influence on me. While I was in Europe, I took a summer and went over to Italy and spent the entire summer studying and practicing ancient or early Italian techniques. One was gold leaf application. Another was the illuminated writing, which has a lot of the symbolisms and the signs. And then also fresco painting, which teaches you how to use and mix pigments. So that was my first introduction to pigments and making them yourself. So this is part of my adventure there. And what the school taught was also restoration of these frescoes and paintings. So this is part of the things that we would go and see and research before we would do our own painting and own gold applications. So my biggest inspiration, though, is cave art. When I discovered those pigments, I was like, how can I do that? You know, so I was like, the cave painters did it, and their paintings are still here. So I was like, I've got to figure this out. So I looked up all different ways that theories and ideas that they had about how they made their pigments, and I began experimenting. And I was very, happy to find out that one of the elements that they found was beeswax, and honey. And I thought, that's something I might be able to use. So I continued trial and error until I came up with a beeswax concoction that I now make and put into my paints when I mix them. And also I use walnut oil instead of animal fat, which was a popular one. My daughter had the opportunity to be in France, and she made a point to go and see some of the caves. And this is some of the things that she sent me to have a look at because she knew my interest in them. We were supposed to go there together, but COVID hit, so we didn't go. Anyways, this shows you some of the materials that they used. And what was interesting to me is these are brushes. These are brushes they made. And that tells me that these people were pretty darn intelligent. The caveman idea of being kind of dumb and kind of figuring their way out, just to survive, changed. I was seeing an intelligent person like myself and us here trying to figure out how can they survive in those conditions in the Ice Age or Paleolithic times and be able to produce beautiful art. And one of the things about that art is that often the paintings were 3D. They had a concept of perspective. They could, if there was 2 horns on the top of that reindeer or elk, there were 2 horns, and they had one closer and one further away. And that captivated me. And the way they would put their legs, they knew that there were more than just, there were 2 in front and 2 in back, not just, sticks either. They were moving. And that was, to me, just so intriguing, because come the Renaissance, what happened? They forget? Where's the perspective? Everything went flat. I'm like, this is interesting to me. Whoops. I just love these plugs over here.
That was a good trip.
I had the opportunity, my husband and I, to hike in the outback in Australia. And the first, of course, I wanted to see the cave art there. So this is what we did. We hiked in the outback, and I was surprised to find some of the signs that I had seen in my pictographs also here in Australia. Now these pictographs were supposed to be Northern Europe all the way down to South Africa, and mainly in France and Spain. We're all familiar with it. And we're familiar with the cave paintings, and they talk about the art, but little is talked about the signs and the symbols. And here I was seeing those cross over, and I'm like, this is interesting. So this is me, and I also was looking up ochres, because when I hike, I like to go and see what ochres I can find. Let me get a drink. When we were in Europe, we had the opportunity to take these hopper flights that they offered at a really good price. So we hopped over to Crete and went to Knossos. And I was surprised to see symbols there that are in the caves that are pictographs that I found in ancient roots of languages. And that was something that was telling me that these signs are more global than we are realizing. Our history books are starting to change, and archaeology is starting to change, and going, you know what? There's other things out here, other factors that we are missing. And now they are coming, starting to see these connections on a global level. So this is kind of part of what I do for my processes. I like to go looking for where I can find good ochres, and a lot of times I'm fascinated with red ochres, yellow ochres in particular, and I just, white too. White is kind of hard to find. Rarely do I find any blue, but this is basically what I do is I go out hiking and collecting. Often, if I don't know the area, I'll do some research or find a geologist that does know the area so they can take me out and show me where I can safely and be eco-friendly as well to my environment when I'm hiking and collecting. So when I bring back materials, you'll see in the back, I'll show you in a little bit here, but I like to grind the rocks and clay that I find, and I put it through a series of sieves to make it very fine and powdery. So here's where I grind it, and then I'm looking to make it a very fine powder. And then when I begin my paintings, I start by adding paper to a wooden canvas or a hard surface, like even stone, I've tried. And then I will charcoal in my design or ideas, and then I block out where I want to put the gold leaf as well. And I start on overall, large scale. I do washes, which is just taking my paints that I have made with the walnut oil and beeswax. I thin them down with a product called EcoSolve. It is a plant-based thinner. No petroleum products are in it. And I thin down my paints and I block in my colors. I think the next one shows blocking in the colors. And then the next one, I think, is adding a little more paint. I might write in my pictographs. I often write pictographs that I feel that go with the theme or idea that's coming across in the painting. And again, adding more and more color, and then having my final. And then the last touch that I do is I often let it sit for a while, and I might go by and I tweak it. And sometimes it's a couple months or so, and I might tweak it again. But I hang, my house is this wonderful place that has these big blank walls. So I get to hang them all up there, and as I go by, I'll notice something and I'll go tweak it. I don't know, it's just one of those things. And it's really little minor things, but to me it makes a difference. And then I take my beeswax that I have, and I will often seal the entire painting with beeswax. When I'm doing raw clays, this is what it looks like when I go out collecting. It's just chunks of clay. I look for like riverbeds or creeks that have dried up, that sort of thing. And where I live, there's this wonderful lake that the water levels drop in the fall so low that I can walk out on the bed of the lake, and that's when I start collecting. I'll look for, and you'll find these patches of yellow ochre, white ochre, red ochre, and you don't see it when it's full of water. And then I like to take after I finish a piece of pottery or get it to the point where it's ready to be fired, I usually pre-fire it in a bisque, make sure it's completely dry. Sometimes I take it to the next level to a mid-fire, so it might become 4 or 5. And then I take it out to my yard. I have a big pit there, and I only do it during the winter months when there's not a whole lot of snow, but there's plenty of rain. Right now we have 4 feet of snow, so it's finally down to, I think, a foot now. And, okay.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I have these fire bricks that I use that I put all the way around it that holds in the heat. And then I have metal that I put on top that's ventilated. And I start the fire in the pit, put the metal plates over the top, and the fire dies down and smolders. So it smolders all the way down through. And then I uncover it, and then I get these interesting effects. I love putting pine cones in there with sap. I get some nice shellacs in there. Now I'd like to invite you to come into the back, and I'll directly talk from a couple of my paintings back there.
Everybody.
All right. Yep.
We'll give Jennifer a big round of applause. Thank you so much. And she's going to continue to talk about some of her pieces in the back education gallery if you'd like to follow her back there.
Oh no, you did really good. Just let me get out of here really quick. Okay.